Welcome, fellow travelers of time and tales, to our cozy corner where history whispers softly, and sometimes the past lingers like a gentle ghost just beneath the surface. Tonight we set sail on the restless seas, following the eerie legends of ghost ships, vessels adrift with no living crew, drifting through fog and mystery. But beyond these haunting stories lies the very real experience of the sailors who lived, loved, and endured the endless ocean. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me on this calm voyage. Whether you're curled up under a warm blanket or listening in the quiet moments before sleep, this is a place where stories come alive in gentle waves, where facts and tales blend seamlessly to soothe the mind and inspire the imagination. So settle in, find your favorite comfy spot, and breathe deeply as we explore these ocean mysteries together. Let the quiet rhythm of the sea and the soft echo of long-ago voices carry you gently through this story. And if you find comfort in these tales, please don't forget to like and subscribe, so more dreamers like you can find this cozy harbor where stories never truly vanish, and history feels like a warm embrace. You wake slowly, as if surfacing from some long dream, your senses returning one by one. The first thing you notice is the chill, a damp, biting cold that clings to your skin beneath the thin woolen shirt you wear. Salt hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the faint, musky scent of wet wood and tar. Somewhere off to your left, the creak of timber shifts like the breath of the ship itself, as if it sighs beneath your feet. You blink through a thick curtain of fog that swirls lazily over the wooden planks beneath you. Your boots press against damp, weather-worn deckboards slick with sea spray and algae. The sky above is a featureless gray, a low ceiling that presses down, swallowing all light and color. No sun, no stars, only the faint hiss of waves sliding against the hull. The sails above hang motionless, heavy and soaked. Ropes dangle from the masts like the trailing hair of some giant sea creature, swaying ever so slightly with the faintest breeze. You reach out and touch one, rough, fraying fibers that have weathered countless storms. The ship feels ancient, both in build and spirit. Your head throbs faintly as you stand, muscles stiff from whatever sleep or unconsciousness you were pulled from. Your mind searches for answers. How did you come to be here? What place is this? But memory is a flickering candle, shadows dancing just beyond your grasp. The silence is profound. No voices, no footsteps, only the whisper of the wind threading through the rigging and the occasional creak of timbers. It's a silence so complete that you become aware of your own breathing, shallow and uneven, mingling with the sounds of the sea. You begin to walk. Each step echoes softly as your boots tap against the deck. Your eyes scan the horizon, but the fog swallows everything beyond a few feet. You can't see land, no other ships, no signs of life except yourself. As you move past the railings, your hand brushes the rough-hewn wood, polished smooth over time by salt and hands long gone. The ship feels alive and yet utterly abandoned, as if waiting patiently for something or someone. You notice the ship's design as best you can under the gray light. The hull is broad, built for long voyages across open seas. The stern rises high, ornate carvings worn by wind and water, faded images of mythical sea creatures and swirling waves. The figurehead at the prow is almost lost to the salt and grime, but you make out the outline of a woman with flowing hair, perhaps a mermaid or a muse watching over the vessel. The deck is cluttered with coils of rope, barrels sealed tight, and crates stamped with faded port names you recognize only faintly, places like Port Royal, Batavia, and Amsterdam. Names that speak of trade, adventure, and far-off lands. You step near the ship's wheel, a massive wooden helm worn smooth by generations of hands. No one is at the wheel now, but it shifts slowly with the ship's gentle sway, as if guided by some invisible hand. You reach out, your fingers brushing the grain, feeling the cold seep into your skin. Your eyes catch a small brass plaque nailed nearby. The inscription is barely legible, the letters corroded by salt and time, but you make out fragments, a name, a year, a symbol that stirs something in your memory. The style of the lettering is unmistakably Dutch, reminiscent of the great East India Company vessels that once ruled these waters centuries ago. A sudden chill runs down your spine as your thoughts drift to the stories you once heard as a child, tales told in hushed tones at seaside taverns and old mariners' inns. Ghost ships drifting without crews, found adrift with everything in place except the sailors themselves. The Mary Celeste, discovered abandoned in the Atlantic with its cargo untouched, but no sign of the crew. The Bedtime, an Arctic whaling ship trapped in ice, seen drifting for decades long after it was abandoned. Sailors had feared such ships, calling them cursed, haunted by restless spirits or worse. Some said they were doomed vessels, trapped between worlds, carrying their lost crews on endless journeys. Others whispered of mutiny, piracy, or the mysterious forces of the sea claiming lives in silence. The fog thickens around you, folding in tighter. It presses against your skin, cool and clammy, as if trying to smother the world itself. You notice the faint outline of a bell near the mast, large and blackened with rust. It doesn't ring now, but you wonder how many times it has sounded across lonely seas, a signal for change, for warning, for passing time. You take a deep breath, the salt air filling your lungs. Time feels suspended here, the usual markers of day and night erased by the endless gray. You wonder if this ship sails in a place outside the flow of time, trapped in a liminal space between memory and reality. The creaking grows louder, wood rubbing against wood as the ship shifts gently. You sense movement beneath your feet, though the sea beyond remains eerily calm. Somewhere deep within the hull, water sloshes softly, a reminder that this ship is still afloat, still alive. Your hand brushes against the railing as you look out into the fog, searching for some sign, any hint of life. But there is only silence, only the endless gray. And then, faintly, a distant sound carries to your ears, a tolling bell, slow and mournful. It is neither near nor far, but something that seems to come from the ship itself, echoing through the mist and into your bones. You swallow hard and take another step forward, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing upon you. This vessel holds secrets, stories long forgotten, and you have only just begun to uncover them. The bell tolls again, slow and hollow, as if marking the passing of some unseen hour. You pause, eyes tracing the swirling gray around you. The fog here is thicker than any you've known, a living thing that curls and coils like smoke, swallowing light and sound alike. It dampens the world to muted shades and muffled echoes, making you feel as though you're drifting in a place far removed from time. As you lean against the railing, memories you didn't know you had stir, as though whispered on the wind. Stories once told by weathered sailors in shadowed taverns come rushing back, tales of ships found abandoned, their crews vanished without a trace. You think first of the Mary Celeste, perhaps the most famous of all ghost ships. Found drifting in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872, her sails full but her decks empty, the crew mysteriously disappeared. No signs of violence, no distress signals, just an eerie silence. Scientists and historians have speculated endlessly, from waterspouts to pirate attacks, even sea monsters. But the truth remains elusive, buried beneath the waves and the fog. Then there is the Bedtime, an Arctic whaling vessel trapped in ice in 1931. The crew abandoned her, expecting to return soon, but she did not remain where they left her. Instead, over the decades, sightings of the Bedtime drifting, unmanned, along the frozen northern seas persisted, sometimes hundreds of miles from where she was abandoned. The ship became a ghost of the Arctic, a silent reminder of man's smallness against nature's vastness. You wonder if the ship you're on is like them, caught somewhere between life and death, reality and myth. A vessel sailing the liminal space where the sea blurs with dreams. The fog thickens still. You press your hands to the railing, tracing the worn grain beneath your fingertips, seeking something tangible amid the shifting gray. The silence is so complete that your heartbeat seems loud, a steady drum in the quiet. Maritime law speaks often of fog as a veil, a boundary between worlds. Sailors long ago believed that thick fog could hide spirits, or that it was the breath of the sea itself, concealing dangers both natural and supernatural. Fog could mean doom. Ships could run aground on unseen reefs, or wander off course into uncharted waters. It could also be a cloak for something darker, ghost ships sailing unseen, ships lost forever to the depths. You think of the psychological weight of such isolation, how days and nights blend into one another and the mind begins to unravel. Long voyages at sea bring sailors face to face with their own fears. The vast emptiness, the endless horizon, the unchanging grey. Some lost themselves to madness, others whispered prayers to gods or spirits they barely understood. The ship creaks again, louder now, and you realize it's moving, not just drifting but turning slowly, deliberately, as if steering itself through the fog. You glance toward the helm. The wheel is unmanned, but its spokes move in slow circles, turning the vessel without a hand to guide. Your eyes are drawn to a faint shape beyond the fog, something solid, unmoving. You squint, but it vanishes as quickly as it appeared. Was it a ship, a shadow, or something else? The fog seems to pulse with quiet energy, and a faint chill spreads up your spine. You shiver, pulling your coat tighter, feeling the dampness seep through your clothes. The sea is calm, but there's a tension in the air, as if the ship itself holds its breath, waiting. You find yourself recalling a legend whispered among sailors centuries ago, the story of the Flying Dutchman, the most infamous ghost ship of all. They said it was a vessel doomed to sail the seas forever, cursed by its captain who defied a mighty storm rather than turn back. The ship would appear suddenly, cloaked in mist and glowing sails, a portent of doom to any who saw her. Some said the captain was condemned to eternal life, never able to find safe harbor, while his crew was trapped in an endless voyage between worlds. Mariners spoke of sightings near the Cape of Good Hope, and how the Dutchman's eerie glow would send shivers through the bravest hearts. You've always been skeptical of such tales, superstition and myth, stories told to frighten new sailors or explain the inexplicable. But now, standing here in the fog, feeling the cold sea air, the stories seem less like fantasy and more like warnings. You run your fingers along the railing again and wonder how many souls have passed through this place, lost between sea and sky. Is this ship a resting place, a prison, or something else entirely? The distant bell tolls once more, echoing through the fog. You feel the weight of the silence, the stories, the endless sea pressing in from all sides. The journey has only just begun. Your footsteps carry you toward the ship's stern, where the woodwork grows more elaborate, yet worn and weathered by endless salt and storms. Near the helm, you notice a small brass plaque, tarnished but still clinging to its place. The letters are nearly erased by time, yet something about the curves and strokes hints at Dutch craftsmanship. Letters reminiscent of the great East India Company vessels that once braved the world's oceans in search of spice, gold, and glory. The ship's figurehead, just beneath the bowsprit, emerges from the mist like a ghostly sentinel. It's a woman, her hair flowing as though caught in a perpetual sea breeze, eyes staring forward with an expression that is both serene and haunting. You feel as though she watches not just the waters ahead, but the very souls that pass through this vessel. As your gaze lingers on the figurehead, thoughts drift to the legend you once dismissed, the Flying Dutchman. Stories whispered over countless nights by sailors in taverns and aboard ships, a captain who cursed the seas themselves, doomed to sail forever without rest. A spectral ship with glowing sails, appearing from the mist as an omen of doom. Now here you stand, aboard a ship that could be its kin, caught between myth and reality, time and oblivion. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. A low murmur rises from below deck, a rhythmic chant barely audible above the creak of the timbers and the lap of the sea. Intrigued and wary, you follow the sound down a narrow stairwell into the dim belly of the ship. The air grows colder, heavier, thick with the scent of salt and something else, something ancient, like burnt incense mixed with seaweed and old smoke. You enter a dimly lit chamber where the crew has gathered. They stand silently, faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats, hands clasped tightly together. At the center stands the captain. His presence commands the room, though he says nothing at first. His coat is richly embroidered but faded, as though stitched from centuries past. His eyes catch the flickering candlelight, reflecting an eerie glow that seems almost unnatural. You feel your breath catch as the captain's gaze meets yours. Then, without a word, he raises a weathered hand and beckons you forward. A murmur ripples through the gathered crew, and they begin a low chant in a language that slips past your understanding, but feels heavy with meaning, a blend of reverence, warning, and ancient power. You are handed a small, trembling candle. The flame wavers blue in the dim light, casting dancing shadows on the rough wood walls. The chanting rises, weaving through the room like a living thing, wrapping around your senses. The captain speaks at last, his voice a gravelly whisper that carries an echo from somewhere beyond this place. "By this oath, we sail beyond the tides of mortal men," he intones. "Bound to the sea's will, between worlds, never to find rest." You repeat the words hesitantly, feeling their weight settle over you like a shroud. As the ritual concludes, the candle's flame steadies and the chanting fades. The captain's eyes remain fixed on you, and you realize you have crossed some invisible threshold, no longer just a visitor, but part of this eternal voyage. You feel the ship beneath your feet shift once more, rising slowly as if awakened from a long slumber. Outside, the fog pulses, thickening and swirling, and you sense the ship sailing deeper into the unknown. A chill settles in your bones. You are not merely aboard a vessel, you have become part of its story, a ghost in the mist, sailing forever. You wake again, though the moment of waking no longer feels anchored to any familiar rhythm. There is no sun to greet, no dawn to break, only the endless, pressing grey of the fog that surrounds the ship like a thick woolen blanket. It wraps around the masts, coils through the rigging, and smothers the horizon until the world is little more than shapes in a ghostly haze. The bell tolls somewhere deep within the ship, slow, deliberate, echoing through the hollow timbers. It's a sound meant to mark time, but here, in this suspended place, it feels like a heartbeat echoing in the void. You listen and wait for it to ring again, as if clinging to the idea of a day, a shift, a moment that separates one from the next. Your body moves almost instinctively. You rise from whatever place you had rested, the boards cold beneath your bare feet. Your muscles are stiff, sore from the endless stillness and strange sleep, but the motions come, as if from memory, the habits of a life once lived on the waves. The deck stretches out before you, damp and slick, with saltwater spray. You feel the ship's slow sway beneath your feet, the gentle creak of wood stretched taut by wind and water. You reach for a coil of rope, your fingers tracing the rough, weather-beaten fibers. It is a comfort, this familiar weight in your hands, a tether to something real in a place otherwise unmoored. The ship demands care, even now, in its ghostly voyage. You begin the endless chores you once knew so well, swabbing the decks, checking the rigging, hauling ropes, and resetting sails. Each movement is deliberate, a rhythm carved into muscle and bone. The mop scrapes the deck in long, steady strokes. The ropes coil neatly at your feet, ready for the next command. You remember how sailors of the 18th century lived by these tasks, work and watch, the pillars of survival at sea. Life was brutal, soul-trubbed skin blistered by wind, hands calloused from endless toil, bell rings marking the passage of watches through night and day. The sea was a master that demanded obedience and precision. But on this ship, the chores feel hollow, the routine endless and unchanging. You pass through spaces where the crew should be, but find only shadows and silence. The sails above flap softly in the breeze, but no voices rise to fill the air. Figures flicker at the edges of your vision, men moving in muted steps, their faces blurred like reflections on disturbed water. They wear the rough wool and leather of sailors, their movements practiced and mechanical, but when you turn to look, they vanish like mist in the sun. You try to call out, your voice breaking the quiet, but no one answers. The crew is present and absent all at once, like memories etched into the wood and rigging. They perform their duties without acknowledgement, caught in a loop of eternal labor. You find yourself in the galley, where a table is set with simple fare. Hardtack biscuits cracked and dry, salted pork stiff with salt, and cups of stale water that do not warm your hands. No fires burn in the hearth, yet the food appears as if by some quiet magic. You sit alone, chewing the tough bread, tasting the grit of salt and age. It reminds you of the sailor's diet, harsh and monotonous, designed to last long voyages but never to satisfy hunger. You think of scurvy, that silent killer of sailors past, caused by the lack of fresh fruit and vegetables. The crew here, if such beings can be called crew, show no signs of life or illness, only endless repetition. As you rise from the table, your eyes catch the faint glimmer of coins embedded beneath a mast. You recall old superstitions. Sailors believed slipping a coin beneath the mast would protect the ship and crew from harm, a small charm against the vast unknown. Whistling on deck was taboo, said to summon storms, and the albatross, a bird both feared and revered, symbolized fortune and curse in equal measure. The air feels charged with unseen forces, the ship itself a vessel of superstition and sorrow. The fog outside thickens, pressing closer, swallowing the world. You climb to your post on the deck, standing watch as the endless sea stretches beyond the grey veil. The compass in your hand spins with a will of its own, refusing to settle. Stars drift lazily overhead, shifting positions, but never forming the constellations you once knew. Time is fluid here, a loop without beginning or end. Yet you keep watch, eyes scanning the horizon for something that might break the spell. The ship creaks beneath you, alive in its own strange way. And though the fog hides all else, you feel it, a quiet movement, a heartbeat beneath the wood, a ship sailing forever between worlds. Figures begin to emerge through the thick fog, faint and shifting like shadows caught between light and darkness. Their movements are slow and deliberate, almost automatic, as they go about their endless work on the decks. Faces blurred by mist, their eyes seem empty or perhaps fixed on some distant memory. When you call out, your voice cracks and falls silent in the damp air. They neither answer nor acknowledge your presence, existing more as echoes than living souls. At first, it is easy to believe these figures are ghosts, trapped spirits bound to this ship forever. Yet, as you watch, a deeper understanding stirs. Perhaps these apparitions are more than just phantoms. They could be reflections of the toll the sea exacts on those who sail it, the fragile boundary between life and hallucination. Long sea voyages were grueling tests of endurance. Sailors confined in tight quarters for months, exposed to harsh weather, hunger, and exhaustion, were pushed beyond their physical and mental limits. The monotony of endless ocean and the isolation of the vast, featureless sea played havoc on their minds. It is well documented that sensory deprivation and fatigue can induce hallucinations, vivid sights and sounds born of the mind's desperate attempt to fill silence and loneliness. Studies of long-term isolation show how the human brain creates images and voices to maintain connection to reality. In the oppressive stillness of fog and night, even the faintest sound or movement could take on ominous shapes. A rocking ship's creak might be mistaken for footsteps. Shifting shadows could become ghostly forms. Fog itself is an agent of deception. Thick, swirling, and nearly opaque, it distorts light and vision. Objects loom and recede, colors fade and blend. Sailors navigating through foggy waters often misjudge distances and shapes, sometimes mistaking distant ships, floating debris, or waves for ghostly vessels. The infamous ghost ships of maritime lore often began as such illusions, ordinary sights transformed by poor visibility and human imagination. Nature added to the eerie tableau. At night, bioluminescent plankton emit a ghostly blue-green glow in the waves. To tired eyes scanning the dark waters, these flickering lights could seem like will-o'-the-wisps, spirits dancing on the surface, leading sailors astray or warning of doom. You watch the crew perform their silent duties, hauling lines, adjusting sails, swabbing decks. Yet no words pass between them, no laughter or command. They move as if caught in an unending loop, bound to the rituals of a lifelong past. You reach out to touch one figure's sleeve, but your hand meets only air. The apparition flickers and fades. The ship itself seems alive with memory. Each creak of timber, each ripple of rope, holds echoes of the men who once sailed here, men who faced relentless storms, hunger, disease, and the constant threat of death. Life aboard an 18th century ship was harsh. Discipline was strict. Every sailor had a role, every task vital. Hours were marked by the ringing of bells, splitting the day into watches, shifts where men guarded the ship, navigated, and maintained sails. Superstition was as much a part of life as rigging and sails. Sailors held deep beliefs in omens and portents, traditions passed down through generations. The albatross, a large seabird often seen near ships, was considered sacred, its death believed to bring misfortune. Whistling on deck was taboo, thought to summon storms or bad luck. Coins placed beneath the mast were charms meant to ensure a safe voyage. The sea was a mysterious, often hostile force, and sailors sought protection in ritual and belief. As you stand gripping the railing, the fog thickens, pressing close, muffling all sound except the occasional toll of the ship's bell. The compass in your hand spins wildly, unable to find true north. Navigation tools, the lifeline of every sailor, seem to lose meaning here. You recall how vital these instruments were in history, guiding ships through treacherous waters. Yet now, nothing obeys the laws of the known world. Above, the stars drift slowly across the sky, their patterns twisting and melting away before your eyes. You search for familiar constellations to orient yourself, but they dissolve into shifting shapes, as if time itself is unraveling. You consider the legends of ships trapped in the doldrums, stretches of ocean where wind dies, currents stall, and vessels drift helplessly. Sailors caught in these endless calms often suffered despair and madness, lost in a limbo between worlds. Perhaps this ship is caught in a similar fate, sailing eternally in a space between reality and myth. A cold shiver runs down your spine as you pull your coat tighter. The fog swirls with a life of its own, curling around masts and rigging like fingers reaching out. In the distance, a lantern flickers and swings gently, yet no one holds it. The light vanishes into the mist as quickly as it appeared. You take your watch once more, eyes scanning the horizon that remains unchanged, an endless expanse of gray. The sea is calm, unnervingly still. The fog breathes with the ship, pulsing like the heartbeat of this ghostly vessel. The bell tolls again, slow and mournful, marking a time that no longer belongs to you. The silence deepens, heavy and full of stories untold. You realize then that you have become part of this voyage, caught between worlds, sailing forever through the mist, where history, myth, and reality entwine. The fog begins to thin ever so slightly as you wander toward the stern, where the air feels heavier, saturated with salt and secrets. You find yourself drawn to the weathered brass plaque fastened near the helm, a relic clinging stubbornly to the ship's memory. Its letters, worn and corroded, hint at a name lost to time, but unmistakably Dutch in script and style. Your fingers brush the cold metal as if hoping to summon the vessel's forgotten story. Your gaze drifts to the figurehead beneath the bowsprit, a carved woman, her face serene yet haunting, her hair carved as if swept by an eternal breeze. Her eyes stare forward, unblinking, a silent sentinel watching the endless gray. The craftsmanship speaks of a time when such figureheads were not mere decoration, but talismans to protect and guide ships through perilous waters. You recall the legend of the Flying Dutchman, a ship condemned to sail the seas forever, its captain cursed for defying nature's will. Tales told by sailors spoke of the ghostly vessel appearing out of fog or storm, sails glowing eerily, an omen to all who saw it. Could this ship be its kin, a vessel caught in a timeless drift, forever bound between the world of the living and the dead? As the chill deepens, a low murmur draws your attention downward. Following the sound, you descend a narrow stairwell into the ship's dim heart, the hold, where the crew once gathered. The air here is colder, thicker, scented faintly with burnt herbs and brine. A circle of figures stands silently, faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats and heavy coats. At their center, the captain looms, his presence commanding, though his eyes gleam with a strange, otherworldly light. His coat, embroidered and faded, tells tales of storms weathered and voyages endured. His gaze locks with yours, deep and unsettling. Without a word, the captain raises a weathered hand, beckoning you closer. The crew begins a low chant in an ancient tongue, words curling and twisting like smoke in the stale air. You are handed a small candle, its flame trembling blue in the dim light. The chant weaves around you, a tapestry of reverence and warning, as if binding the ship and crew in a solemn oath. The captain's voice finally breaks the chant, gravelly and echoing. By this oath, we sail beyond mortal tides, bound to the sea's will, never to find rest. You echo the words, their weight settling like a shroud over your soul. The ritual concludes, the flame steadies, casting long shadows. The captain's gaze lingers, and you sense you have crossed some invisible threshold, no longer a mere visitor, but part of this eternal voyage. The ship shifts beneath your feet, as though waking from a long slumber. Outside, the fog pulses, swirling and thickening, and you feel the vessel steering itself deeper into the unknown. A shiver runs through you, a mixture of fear and awe. You realize you are not just aboard a ship, you are entwined with its fate, sailing forever on a ghostly sea. The fog hangs heavy like a curtain, thick and unyielding, swallowing the world in a pale gray silence. For what feels like an eternity, the sea around you is nothing but endless mist and the gentle sway of your ship. Then, through the haze, a shape begins to materialize, a shadow first, barely visible, like a wraith appearing from the depths of memory. Slowly, it grows clearer. A vast ship looms beside you, its silhouette stark against the pale sky. The masts rise high, their rigging tangled and worn, sails hanging like shredded silk torn by countless storms. The wood is weathered and darkened, cracked by time and salt. Yet despite its decay, the ship moves forward with a steady purpose, cutting silently through the water without a single splash to mark its passage. You lean over the railing, heart pounding, eyes searching for signs of life on this ghostly vessel. The decks are empty, no crew, no captain, no laughter or calls. The silence is absolute, but the sails remain trimmed, taut in the invisible wind, as if held by hands unseen. The ship's course is steady, deliberate, following an invisible path through the mist. It feels wrong and impossible all at once, a ship sailing without anyone to guide her. This eerie sight is not without precedent. Sailors throughout history have told stories of ghost ships appearing from the fog, vessels seemingly alive, yet without living crews. These apparitions carried with them tales of mystery and tragedy, forever etched into maritime lore. One such story is that of the Jenny, a schooner trapped in Antarctic ice in the 19th century. Discovered decades later, the ship's deck was frozen and deserted, the crew long dead, preserved in the bitter cold, trapped in time like the ship itself. Her frozen remains stirred whispers of curses and eternal wandering across icy seas. Another haunting tale is that of the Octavius, a merchant ship lost in the Arctic. Legend says the vessel was found drifting years later, ice-locked and unmanned. The captain, it's said, was discovered at his desk, pen still in hand, frozen in death, but forever fulfilling his duties. Such stories blurred the lines between history and myth, feeding sailors' fears of the unknown. As you watch, the ghostly ship glides closer. Its hull creaks faintly, a sound swallowed quickly by the fog. The rigging shivers as the sails catch the unseen breeze. You try to catch a glimpse of a name or figurehead, but the mist twists and distorts the view, leaving only a haunting impression of something ancient and otherworldly. The absence of life aboard is both unsettling and mesmerizing. Ships require constant attention. Every sail, every rope, every plank demands care. The idea of a vessel moving with no hands to steer her defies reason. You imagine the sailors who once lived and worked here, now reduced to shadows and stories. The scene triggers a flood of memories about the lives of sailors from centuries past. Life on a sailing ship was unforgiving, a blend of routine, danger, and superstition. Ships were not just vessels, but homes, prisons, and battlefields. Crews formed tight bonds, sharing hardships and hopes under the harshest conditions. Sailors lived by the tides and the stars, relying on navigation tools like the compass and sextant, reading the winds and currents with practiced skill. Yet, even the most seasoned could be undone by nature's whims, storms, hidden reefs, and the unpredictable ocean. The thought that a ship might continue its voyage without crew touches something primal. The fear of the unknown, of losing control, of being utterly alone in a vast, indifferent world. You wonder about the unseen forces that might keep this ghost ship sailing. Is it a curse, a trapped soul, or simply a trick of light and mind, shaped by the fog and your own fears? The vessel maintains its course alongside you, an uncanny mirror reflecting your own voyage. The sails, though tattered, seem perfectly balanced, as if the ship itself is alive, guided by some ancient will. You notice the ship's movements are strangely graceful. It turns with precise angles, maneuvers as if aware of your presence, yet never closing the distance. The mist cloaks her in mystery, hiding details that might explain her origin or fate. No sound breaks the silence except the faint creak of wood and the whisper of the wind, yet no wind stirs the air around you. The absence of sound makes the moment feel suspended in time, a liminal space between reality and dream. You try to summon courage, but the sight chills your spine. This is no ordinary ship. It is a phantom of the sea, a vessel caught between worlds, a ghost story come to life. As the mist begins to thicken once more, the ship holds its course, sailing beside you for one final moment. You catch a glimpse of the tattered sails, the weathered hull, the ghostly outline against the grey. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the ship begins to turn. Its bow swings toward you with unnatural speed, faster than any sailing vessel could manage. The sails flap wildly, yet there is no wind. For a heartbeat, you lock eyes with the empty deck. No crew, no captain, just the silent promise of a curse. And then the ship vanishes, no splash, no wake, no sound, only silence. The sudden disappearance of the ship leaves your heart pounding and your mind swirling with questions. What was that vessel? How could it sail with no crew? And what did it mean that it vanished so suddenly, as if swallowed whole by the sea and the fog? Sailors of old told many such stories, ghost ships that drifted silently through mist and night, vessels that appeared and disappeared without explanation. These tales were more than just seafarer folklore. They reflected real events, mysteries, and fears that haunted every sailor who braved the ocean's vastness. One of the most famous ghost ships is the Jenny, a schooner trapped in the Antarctic ice in the 19th century. Discovered decades after its disappearance, the ship was found frozen, its sails furled but intact, decks deserted and eerily preserved in the icy silence. The crew had perished, locked in a frozen tomb, their fate a grim reminder of nature's power and the ocean's indifference. The Jenny's discovery sparked fascination and fear. It became a symbol of the unknown dangers lurking at the edges of the world, a vessel forever lost, but still sailing in memory and legend. The cold silence of the Antarctic Sea seemed to hold its secrets tightly, making the story both chilling and strangely beautiful. Then there's the Octavius, a ship said to have been found drifting in the Arctic years after its last voyage. Legend says the crew was frozen in place, the captain seated at his desk with a pen still in hand, as if caught mid-journey. Whether fact or myth, the story of the Octavius captured imaginations, blending the harsh reality of the Arctic with supernatural mystery. These ships, like the one you glimpsed, embody the fears sailors have always faced, being lost, trapped, or forgotten by time and tide. The ocean is a vast, merciless realm that swallows ships whole, erasing them without a trace or leaving only haunting reminders. Ghost ships remind us that the sea does not forgive mistakes easily. A single storm, a hidden reef, or a misread current could condemn a ship to drift forever, lost in an endless, silent voyage. As you stand on your own ship's deck, the memory of these stories anchors you in the present, even as the mysterious vessel continues to haunt your thoughts. The fog thickens again, wrapping everything in its cold embrace. Suddenly, the ghost ship's bow swings sharply toward you with impossible speed. Its movement defies all reason. No sailing vessel could turn so fast without wind or crew. Your breath catches as the ship seems to fix its unseen gaze on you. For a fleeting moment, it feels as though the ship itself is alive, aware, and perhaps warning you away. Then, as if the sea itself had swallowed it, the ship vanishes. No splash disturbs the glassy water, no wind distorts the sails. Only silence remains, thick and heavy, filling the space where the ghost ship once was. You stand frozen, heart racing, struggling to grasp the reality of what you've seen. The sea is calm, the mist unbroken, yet the impossible encounter lingers like a shadow in your mind. In maritime history, such sudden vanishings were often attributed to the supernatural. Sailors spoke of ships cursed to sail forever, condemned by fate or folly. The Flying Dutchman, perhaps the most famous of these legends, was said to haunt the seas as a warning to those who dared defy the natural order. But there are other explanations, rooted in the natural world and human perception. Fog and mist can create optical illusions, bending light and shadow to craft phantom images. Mirages over water sometimes produce floating ships or distant lights that vanish upon approach. Psychology also plays a role. In the isolation of the sea, the mind can trick itself, seeing what it fears or hopes for. Stories passed from sailor to sailor can shape expectations, making every shadow and sound charged with meaning. Whatever the truth, you know this encounter has changed you. The ocean has revealed one of its secrets, if only for a moment, and the mystery of the ghost ship remains with you, a silent companion on your endless voyage. The ghost ship vanishes, leaving only the fog and the endless sea around you. But the eerie silence lingers, echoing in your thoughts as the waves lap gently against the hull. In this vast solitude, your mind begins to wrestle with what you've seen and what it might mean. Life at sea is unlike anywhere else. The ocean is vast and indifferent, a boundless expanse of water stretching beyond the horizon, where familiar landmarks disappear and time seems to fold in on itself. Days blend into nights, and nights stretch endlessly. Without solid ground beneath your feet or the comfort of steady routines on land, the mind is vulnerable to strange and powerful effects. Isolation is one of the most profound challenges sailors faced. For weeks, sometimes months, crews lived in close quarters but were cut off from the wider world. Letters from loved ones were rare or non-existent. News of home, war, or whether far away was delayed or lost entirely. The only company was the ship itself, the crew, and the vast emptiness outside. This loneliness, combined with constant physical hardship, rough weather, cramped quarters, and scarce food, created a fertile ground for psychological strain. Depression, anxiety, and exhaustion were common. Sailors sometimes suffered from what today might be recognized as PTSD or other stress disorders. But the mind doesn't simply break, it adapts. In the absence of stimulation, it conjures visions and sounds to fill the void. Hallucinations, both visual and auditory, became part of life at sea. Imagine staring into the foggy night, eyes straining to find meaning in shifting shadows and whispers carried on the wind. A figure might appear in the mist, just a trick of light and fog, or a distant light might flicker on the horizon. The brain interprets these ambiguous signals, sometimes as ghosts or spirits, shaped by cultural beliefs and fears. Group psychology also played a role. Sailors shared stories around the fire or in the hold, passing down legends of ghost ships, cursed crews, and phantom lights. These tales reinforced expectations. When the mind is primed to see spirits, it often does. Sleep deprivation compounded these effects. On long watches, sailors struggled to rest properly. Fatigue reduced the brain's ability to filter sensory information, leading to vivid dreams or waking hallucinations. Even simple physical conditions could alter perception. Carbon monoxide from lamps or galley fires sometimes caused dizziness or hallucinations. Malnutrition weakened bodies and minds alike. The creaking of wood or shifting rigging in the dark could sound like footsteps or whispers. Superstitions were, in many ways, coping mechanisms. Believing in omens, rituals, or protective charms gave sailors a sense of control in an uncontrollable world. Knowing not to whistle on deck or to respect the albatross offered small comforts against the vast unknown. These psychological and environmental factors combined to create the fertile ground for ghost ship legends. What you saw, the silent vessel with empty decks and taut sails, was as much a reflection of human fears and adaptations as it was a mysterious phenomenon of the sea. In this way, the ghost ships are not just vessels of superstition, but windows into the sailor's experience. Their isolation, fear, hope, and the human need to find stories in the silence. As you stand once again on your own ship's deck, the fog closing in, you realize that the sea's greatest mysteries often lie not just in the water beneath, but in the minds of those who brave its vastness. The ghost ship may have vanished, but its story, and the stories of those who sailed before you, remain eternal. The ghost ship has vanished into the mist, its silence lingering like a fading dream. You stand alone on your own vessel's deck, the eerie encounter still echoing in your mind. But now the fog begins to lift, revealing the tangible reality of life at sea, a world defined not by ghosts or legends, but by the sweat, toil, and rhythms of those who truly lived aboard these ships. Here, every sound, every smell, every creak and groan of timber is part of a living, breathing organism. The ship and her crew working in unison to survive the ocean's endless challenges. The day begins long before dawn, long before the sun peaks over the horizon. You awaken to the sharp clang of the ship's bell ringing out across the quiet water. It calls you from your hammock, swinging gently between thick beams beneath the deck. The air is heavy with salt and tar, mingling with the faint scent of sweat and the seaweed that clings to the hull. Outside, the ship breathes. The wood creaks as it flexes with the waves, ropes groan under tension, and sails flap softly in the morning breeze. Every noise is familiar and necessary, a sign that the ship lives and moves. You dress quickly in your coarse, damp clothing, rough linen that smells faintly of the ocean. Below decks, the light is dim, lanterns casting flickering shadows on planks worn smooth by countless footsteps. The air is thick with humidity and the faint musk of old wood and hardtack biscuits. Above, the officers begin their rounds, voices low but firm as they check the crew's readiness. Discipline is strict aboard a sailing ship, necessary to maintain order amid chaos. The captain, a figure both respected and feared, rules with absolute authority, his word law. Beneath him, a chain of command stretches down through the officers and petty officers, masters, midshipmen, boatswains, and able seamen, all tasked with guiding the crew and keeping the ship running like clockwork. Every sailor knows their place. The hierarchy is clear and unyielding, born of necessity. Without it, the ship would fall into disorder, risking lives and mission alike. Your duties are many and varied. You may find yourself hauling on heavy ropes, adjusting sails to catch the shifting wind, swabbing the deck to keep it clean and safe, or repairing torn canvas before the next storm. No task is too small. Every job contributes to the survival of the ship and crew. You learn quickly that strength alone is not enough. Skill, timing, and teamwork are vital. A single mistake on deck could mean torn sails, lost rigging, or worse. As the sun climbs, orders ripple through the crew like a wave. The boatswain's whistle cuts sharp and clear, signaling tasks and movements. Men scramble to their stations, voices shouting commands, feet pounding on wooden planks. Below, the galley bustles with activity. Cooks prepare meager rations for the hungry crew, their faces grim but determined. Food is simple and repetitive, but it sustains life for long voyages. Throughout it all, you sense an unspoken camaraderie, the bond forged by shared hardship and mutual reliance. Though the ocean is vast and merciless, aboard this ship you are part of something larger, a moving community riding the waves together. The rhythm of the ship, its routines and rituals, becomes your anchor in the uncertainty of the sea. Here, amid the salt and wind, you come to understand the true life of a sailor, far removed from ghost stories, yet filled with its own quiet mysteries and struggles. Below deck, the world shifts from the salty wind and open skies into cramped, shadowed quarters that seem almost cut off from the sea itself. As you descend the narrow companionway, the sounds above soften to muffled creaks and distant voices. The air grows thick and humid, heavy with the mingled scents of brine, sweat, damp wood, and something faintly sour, the unmistakable smell of hard work and close quarters. This is where the sailors sleep, eat, and live during long voyages, a narrow, crowded space lined with hammocks swaying gently in time with the ship's motion. The low beams overhead are scarred and blackened by soot from lanterns and cooking fires. Between hammocks, crates and barrels are stacked high, filled with supplies, tools, and precious stores of food. You find your own hammock slung between two beams, a simple sack tied with ropes, barely wide enough to lie flat. It swings slightly as you settle in, rocking with the motion of the ship. Here, space is a luxury, and privacy even more so. You share these quarters with dozens of men, each wrapped in their own bundle of cloth and dreams. Rats are a constant nuisance, skittering through the shadows, searching for scraps. Their presence is accepted as part of ship life, a minor irritation compared to storms or enemy fire. Cockroaches and other insects thrive in the humid air, and the dampness seeps into clothing and skin, chilling even the hardiest sailors. Lighting is dim and flickering. Lanterns are kept low to avoid fire risks. You learn to navigate by memory as much as sight, aware of the narrow walkways and low beams that could bruise an unsuspecting head. Sleeping arrangements are chaotic. Hammocks are often packed so tightly that movement becomes a careful dance. Sailors take shifts, trying to rest during odd hours while others stand watch. Sleep is seldom restful. The constant rocking and noise ensure that rest is fitful at best. Meals happen in shifts, too, since there is barely room to gather everyone at once. Below deck, the galley is a cramped space where cooks work hard to stretch limited ingredients into nourishing meals. Heat, smoke, and the smell of cooking fill the small area, a welcome contrast to the salty chill above. Food on board is simple and functional, designed to keep men alive over long voyages. Hardtack, a dry, dense biscuit made of flour and water, is a staple. It's tough and flavorless, but lasts for months without spoiling. Sailors often soaked it in water or broth to soften it, though it was notorious for attracting pests and causing toothaches. Salted meat, usually beef or pork, provides protein. It's heavily cured to prevent decay, but often tough and salty. Dried peas, beans, and rice supplement the diet, along with occasional fresh vegetables or fish when conditions allowed. Water is stored in barrels, but could become stale or contaminated, making rationing strict. To combat scurvy, the deadly disease caused by vitamin C deficiency, ships sometimes carried citrus fruits or sauerkraut. But understanding of nutrition was limited, and scurvy remained a leading cause of death. Alcohol was a common ration. Grog, a mix of watered-down rum or whiskey, was distributed daily to dull hunger and keep morale. Though it sometimes led to rowdiness, it was seen as essential to sailors' well-being. Despite the simplicity, the monotony of food could weigh heavily on morale. Sailors longed for fresh bread, fruits, and vegetables, reminders of home and health. The constant sameness added to the mental strain of months at sea. Still, these rations kept sailors alive through storms and doldrums, and the routine of meals brought moments of normalcy. Sharing food, stories, and jokes in the cramped galley fostered bonds that helped carry the crew through hardship. Below-deck life was demanding and often uncomfortable, but it was also the center of community and survival. The hardships forged a tight-knit crew, bound together by shared experience and the endless rhythm of the sea. The endless days at sea weigh heavily not only on the body, but on the mind. Isolation stretches on with no real end in sight. The vast ocean around can feel like a prison as much as a path to adventure. The relentless routine, the uncertainty of weather and fate, and the closeness of so many souls pressed into tight quarters create a mental strain few on land can understand. Yet amid this harshness, sailors found ways to cope. Music became a powerful balm. Sea shanties sung in unison, while hauling ropes or working the sails gave rhythm to the grueling labor and eased the monotony. These songs, with their call and response patterns, strengthened bonds and helped the crew coordinate complex tasks. Storytelling also played a crucial role. In the cramped warmth below deck or around the ship's deck in calmer weather, sailors exchanged tales of adventure, loss, and legend. These stories passed down wisdom, shared fears, and connected sailors across generations and oceans. Laughter, jokes, and practical jokes broke up the tension, reminding everyone they were more than just cogs in a ship's machinery. Humor became a lifeline, a way to reclaim a small measure of joy amid hardship. Still, the mental toll was undeniable. Feelings of homesickness and despair were common. Some sailors fell into deep melancholy. Others struggled with anger or superstition-fueled paranoia. Discipline and camaraderie worked hand in hand to keep order and morale, but breakdowns did occur. sometimes leading to fights, desertions, or worse. The harsh environment fostered a fierce sense of loyalty and brotherhood. Trust was essential. Each man relied on others to perform their duties and keep the ship safe. In storms or battles, this trust became a lifeline. Bonds forged on the waves were intense and often lifelong. At the heart of sailors' mental resilience were rituals and superstitions, practical or symbolic customs that offered control in a world governed largely by chance. Many common beliefs might seem strange today, but served important social or psychological functions. For example, whistling on deck was often forbidden. It was thought to whistle up storms, a reminder that the sea's power was not to be mocked. Sailors carried lucky charms, pieces of wood, coins, or trinkets given by loved ones to ward off misfortune. The superstition surrounding the albatross is well known, thanks to Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. In reality, sailors regarded the albatross as a good omen, a sign of a nearby land or calm seas. Killing one was believed to bring terrible luck. Some rituals were practical in origin. The tradition of crossing the line, a ceremony held when crossing the equator, both entertained and built camaraderie. It marked a sailor's passage into a new stage of his journey, providing structure and celebration amid monotony. Other customs helped sailors cope with the unknown, offering explanations for strange sights and sounds, or providing ways to influence fate. The belief that certain days or phases of the moon were luckier than others shaped decisions and morale. Rituals gave sailors a sense of order and security, helping them manage fear and uncertainty. They reinforced community bonds and connected men to a shared culture and identity that transcended nationality or rank. In these ways, life aboard a sailing ship was as much about mental endurance as physical strength. The ocean tested every part of a sailor, demanding resilience, discipline, and belief, sometimes in the supernatural, sometimes in the camaraderie of fellow men. Standing on deck, feeling the wind and salt spray, you can almost hear the echoes of shanties and laughter, the rhythm of countless hands pulling ropes, the whispered prayers and good luck charms of those who sailed before. Their lives were hard and uncertain, but through rituals, stories, and shared toil, they created a world that was at once terrifying and profoundly human. The night sky stretches above you like a dark canvas stitched with silver. The stars are brilliant and endless, clearer than anything you've ever seen on land. There are no city lights to dull them here, only the hum of the waves and the soft creak of timber beneath your feet. The ship rocks gently, and somewhere behind you, a watchman's footsteps echo in the silence. You lean on the rail, eyes scanning the sky. The North Star hangs steady, a quiet constant in the slowly turning heavens. Around it, constellations move on their ancient paths. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Great Bear, all pieces of a celestial map sailors have followed for thousands of years. To navigate this empty ocean without roads, signs, or landmarks, sailors learned to read the stars like scripture. Night after night, they charted their courses by observing the heavens. For centuries, these celestial bodies were not only beautiful, they were vital. They told you where you were and which way to go, and for the experienced navigator, they offered reassurance that even in the vast unknown, there was order above the waves. But the stars were only one piece of the puzzle. Below deck, in a small chest carefully protected from moisture and careless hands, lay the tools that turned those stars into direction. Brass instruments, carefully calibrated, often passed down through generations. These were the lifeblood of a ship's navigation, delicate and essential. Most important was the sextant, a metal arc with a movable arm and small mirrors. It allowed sailors to measure the angle between a celestial body and the horizon, most often the sun or stars. With this measurement and a good set of mathematical tables, they could calculate their latitude, their distance north or south of the equator. The sextant was a marvel of design, more precise than anything that came before it, but it required a steady hand and clear skies. A single misread degree could mean being off course by miles. Before the sextant, there had been simpler tools. The cross-staff, held up to the eye and used to gauge similar angles, and the astrolabe, a heavy, disc-like device descended from ancient Greek science. These were less precise, more cumbersome, but served mariners well for centuries before more advanced devices arrived. Direction was tracked by the magnetic compass, a tool so familiar today it's easy to forget how revolutionary it was. By floating a magnetized needle on a piece of cork or mounting it in a gimbaled housing, sailors could keep a consistent bearing even when clouds covered the stars. Yet the compass was not infallible. Iron in the ship's hull, changes in the Earth's magnetic field, or nearby mountains could throw off readings. A skilled navigator always cross-checked with the sky when he could. Speed and distance posed their own problems. To estimate how far they had traveled, sailors used a log line, a rope knotted at regular intervals, tied to a weighted piece of wood. The log was tossed overboard and allowed to trail behind the ship while a sandglass, a 30-second hourglass, was flipped. The number of knots let out while the sand ran down indicated the ship's speed in nautical miles per hour. This is, in fact, where the term knots comes from. It was a rough system, but it worked. Combine speed with time, and you could estimate your distance traveled, a method called dead reckoning. Yet it depended heavily on accurate guesses, and the longer a voyage stretched, the more those small errors accumulated. Aboard your ship, these tools are handled with reverence. The navigator, usually one of the most educated men aboard, spends long hours comparing notes, checking the log, and sketching new positions onto the ship's charts. Every evening, he checks the stars and makes a new entry. Every morning, he marks your estimated location. It is both science and art, a blend of calculation, instinct, and experience. And then there are the charts themselves, rolled maps inked with coastlines, currents, and the positions of ports, reefs, and trade winds. Some are modern, others are copies of charts centuries old, passed down and hand-corrected voyage by voyage. A mistake on one of these could doom a ship just as surely as a broken mast. In times of peace, many ships carried portolan charts, meticulously detailed navigational maps crisscrossed with compass lines and bearing markers, developed by Mediterranean mariners and used well into the 18th century. These charts were as beautiful as they were useful, often illustrated with sea monsters, compass roses, and richly colored coastlines. But even the best tools could not account for everything. The sea was always shifting. A current misread, a wind that turned unexpectedly, or a fog that obscured the stars for days could throw an entire voyage off course. Navigation in the age of sail required constant vigilance and a deep, abiding respect for nature. Standing under the stars, you feel the weight of this knowledge. In this world, there is no GPS to correct your course, no satellite to pinpoint your location. Every direction, every choice is made by hand, eye, and memory. And with each passing mile, the ocean reminds you, it does not forgive carelessness. The morning sky is pale and cloudless, the sea stretching in all directions like a mirror. No land in sight, no island on the horizon, just wind, rigging, and the steady creak of wood. A good day for sailing and for getting lost. Without visible landmarks or a clear celestial fix, your navigator turns to an older, more instinctual form of guidance, dead reckoning. It's a method that relies on memory, measurement, and mathematics. You estimate where you are based on the direction you've traveled, the time spent moving, and the speed of the ship. It sounds straightforward, but at sea, even small miscalculations can compound quickly. The navigator begins by reviewing the previous day's position. Then, using the log line and sandglass, he estimates the ship's current speed, perhaps 5 knots, maybe 6 with a strong tailwind. A course is plotted using the compass, adjustments are made for known currents or drift, and he marks the new position on the chart. It is, in truth, an educated guess. For every hour that passes, this guess becomes a little less reliable. Ocean currents, unseen tides, wind shifts, and steering errors, each plays its part in altering the vessel's true path. A ship sailing for 2 weeks without sighting land could be dozens or even hundreds of miles off course without realizing it. To sailors, the margin for error was often terrifying. Get too far west, and you might hit a reef. Too far north and ice could appear. Too far south and you'd miss your destination altogether. Many ships vanished not because they were cursed, but because they miscalculated, and the sea does not forgive mistakes. You help the navigator spread out the large parchment map, weighted at the corners to keep it from curling in the wind. It shows coastlines like fingers reaching into the sea, dotted with tiny notations, shoals, islands, dangerous waters. But much of it is blank, especially in the far reaches of the Southern Ocean and the Pacific. Uncharted might as well mean unknown. Still, one thing was easier to find, even in the emptiness of the sea: latitude. Since ancient times, sailors had learned how to measure the height of the sun at noon, or the position of the North Star at night, to determine their distance north or south of the equator. Using a sextant, the navigator takes a reading at the sun's zenith and checks it against an almanac. With these tools, he can tell, fairly reliably, that you are sitting at 23 degrees, 10 minutes north. But latitude alone is not enough. A ship can sail for weeks along the same parallel and never see its intended port. What really matters is longitude, your position east or west. And in the age of sail, longitude was the great unsolved mystery of the sea. The problem wasn't conceptual. Sailors knew that the Earth rotated 360 degrees every 24 hours, 15 degrees per hour. If you could measure the time difference between your local noon, when the sun is highest overhead, and the time at a fixed location like Greenwich, England, you could calculate how far you'd traveled longitudinally. 1 hour of difference equaled 15 degrees of longitude, but this required one critical thing: an accurate clock. And therein lay the problem. In the 17th and 18th centuries, no clock could reliably keep time on a moving ship. Pendulums swayed with the motion of the sea. Springs rusted or jammed. Changes in temperature warped delicate mechanisms. Even a few minutes' error per day could throw off a ship's position by hundreds of miles. Entire fleets ran aground or missed their destinations due to bad longitude estimates. One of the most infamous tragedies was the Scilly naval disaster of 1707, when 4 British warships struck rocks off the Isles of Scilly. Over 1,400 men died, all because their navigators didn't know how far west they drifted. The disaster shocked the British government into action. In 1714, they created the Longitude Act, offering a massive cash prize, £20,000, to anyone who could devise a practical way to determine longitude at sea. The answer came not from a university-trained astronomer, but from a self-taught carpenter, John Harrison. Over decades of tireless work, Harrison invented a series of marine clocks, called chronometers, that could keep accurate time despite the ship's motion and environmental changes. His final design, H4, resembled a large pocket watch. When tested at sea in 1761, it allowed the ship to determine its longitude within just a few nautical miles, an unprecedented achievement. With the chronometer, the seas began to shrink, not physically but mentally. Captains could now chart precise courses, avoid hazards, and arrive in port on schedule. Maps grew more accurate, trade routes more efficient, and sailing became safer, though never entirely free from risk. Back aboard your ship, the navigator consults the brass chronometer, its ticking steady and sure. He compares the time to the sun's height overhead and makes a few careful notes. Then he marks your estimated position on the chart with a soft charcoal pencil. You are somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, and for the first time in days, you know almost exactly where. The act of finding yourself on the open ocean, without GPS, without satellites, only using sunlight, angles, and gears, is a quiet triumph. It is as much an act of faith as it is one of science. And it is one that has carried countless ships, like yours, across the edge of the world. Sometimes the best tools a sailor has are not made of brass or wood, but of intuition, memory, and a deep understanding of the natural world. Even with compasses and sextants, you've come to rely on subtle clues the sea offers. The scent in the air changes just before land is near. The color of the water shifts, ever so slightly depending on the depth. Waves roll differently in shallow coastal zones than in the deep sea. You start to notice these things, not as facts, but as instincts, honed day after day on the deck. The crew is older than you, and they're full of quiet wisdom. One man, Davies, weathered and always squinting at the sky, can smell rain 2 hours before it comes. Another, Callahan, swears he can hear when a storm is behind the wind. And maybe he can. You learn not to doubt the strange, half-remembered skills passed down by generations of seafarers. The sky is your map. The cloud formations warn of weather patterns and distant land. A sailor could read a mare's tail, cirrus clouds, as a sure sign of changing winds. A red sky at night, they'd say, was a sailor's delight, while red in the morning meant danger ahead. Birds are another sign. Gulls may travel far, but other seabirds rarely stray from land. Spotting a flock circling at dawn can mean you're close to shore, even when the horizon shows nothing but blue. On calmer days, flying fish skipping across the surface or clusters of drifting seaweed like sargassum may indicate you've entered new waters, or passed a current used by navigators for centuries. Experienced sailors even read the swell, the long, low movement of the ocean itself. It doesn't always match the surface wind. Beneath storm-tossed waves, the swell can hint at wind blowing hundreds of miles away. Polynesian and Micronesian navigators could sail for weeks using only wave patterns and stars, long before European ships ever arrived. You're starting to see it all now, not as superstition, but as a language, one that reveals itself only to those willing to watch and listen. The ocean speaks, if you're quiet enough to hear it, but sometimes it speaks in silence. You are 3 weeks at sea. Land was last sighted 10 days ago, a low green ridge swallowed by clouds off the port stern. Since then, nothing but waves. The stars have been hidden by overcast skies for nearly a week, and your navigator hasn't taken a celestial fix in days. You rely now on dead reckoning, your last known position, your heading, your speed. But the current has shifted, and the wind is inconsistent. Each day, the navigator's marks on the map grow more tentative. The lines of progress curl into loops of uncertainty. His eyes are tired, and his updates are shorter than usual. You know the look in the crew's faces. They feel it too. The ocean is suddenly vast again, not just large, but endless. You begin to wonder whether you're still sailing toward your destination or away from it. You begin to question the tools, the course, even your own senses. Was that island a dream? Were the birds really circling or just passing by? This is what it means to be lost at sea. Not always a sudden crisis, but a creeping realization that you no longer know where you are, and you have no guarantee you'll find your way back. In the age of sail, it was a constant fear. Entire ships would vanish, slipping into fog banks and never re-emerging. Perhaps they struck a reef or drifted into the doldrums, where wind disappears for days. Perhaps they simply went too far in the wrong direction, unable to correct their course before supplies ran out. There are countless entries in ship logs that end mid-sentence. Explorers like Jean-François de la Pérouse set out with grand intentions and were never seen again. And for every famous name, there were hundreds of merchant vessels, naval schooners, and privateers whose fates are still unknown. To be lost at sea is to face the edge of knowledge and the limits of control. And yet, amid the fear, there is something else too, resilience. Even in the face of doubt, the ship sails on. The crew sharpens their routines. The navigator recalculates. Lookouts climb the masts twice as often. You listen harder to the wind, watch the shape of the waves, and check the compass with your own hands. This is the strange magic of sailing, how knowledge, uncertainty, and instinct intertwine. In time, the clouds may part. A single star might appear. The chronometer ticks with steady certainty. A course correction is made, and the ship finds its rhythm once more. The horizon is still empty, but you feel a shift, not in the wind, but in the crew's steps. The belief returns, quiet but steady, like the tide itself. To navigate the unknown is not to master it, it's to learn how to live within its rules, and to survive its silence. You feel it before you see it. The sea has grown quiet, not calm, but cautious. The wind, once steady, now shifts and pulses as if unsure of its own direction. The clouds above you thicken slowly, like smoke poured into the sky. In the distance, gulls that once followed the ship vanish, their cries suddenly absent. There is a weight in the air, not just humidity, but something ancient. A pressure behind your eyes, a stillness that presses against your chest. Old sailors say the ocean holds its breath before a storm, and now you understand what they meant. The crew feels it too. Their voices drop, movements grow brisk. Men glance at the horizon between tasks, searching for signs in the clouds and waves. There are no weather reports here, no forecasts or radar. The warnings come from the sea itself. You've learned to watch the sky. High above, feathered cirrus clouds, what they call mare's tails, twist and fan out like brushstrokes. They're thin, high, and deceptively delicate, but old hands know they signal change. To the east, denser formations begin to build. Cumulonimbus towers with dark underbellies and flashes of distant lightning within. Below deck, the ship's barometer dips steadily. A falling pressure reading, a sure sign of an approaching front, and with it, rain, wind, and waves high enough to swallow a man whole. By now, every man aboard knows what's coming. A gale, perhaps worse. The ship's log records the date, the heading, and a note in the captain's hand. Squalls forming, winds backing south-southwest. There's no turning back, only preparation. Above deck, a cry goes out. Reef the topsails. What follows is both chaos and coordination. You and your crewmates spring into action, muscle memory guiding your hands even as the wind begins to pick up. You grab lines, haul halyards, and secure everything that might fly loose. Time is short, maybe hours, maybe less, and the ship must be made ready for whatever the sea has planned. The sails are the first to go. Full canvas is a death sentence in a storm, so the crew begins the process of reefing, reducing the size of the sails by tying them off at intervals to expose less surface to the wind. Reef points are knotted along the edge of the sailcloth as men climb the rigging with a speed that borders on reckless. You follow them upward, boots slipping on wet rope, fingers finding holds on the ratlins. From the yardarm, the sea already looks more threatening, grey-green and restless. The wind is rising. You can feel it push at your back like a warning. With reefing done, the order comes to strike the light sails. Studding sails, royals, and flying jibs. These delicate canvas wings, used to catch every available puff in fair weather, would rip to shreds in the coming gale. They are unlashed, furled, and bound tight to the yards with lines called gaskets. You help tie the last of them just as the first gust rattles the shrouds. Back on deck, the work continues. Hatches are battened down, canvas tarps stretched over wooden frames and nailed or tied to keep water out. Below decks, the carpenter checks the pumps, ensuring they are free of blockage and primed for action. If the ship takes on water, these pumps are the only thing standing between life and the ocean's bottom. Cargo is secured with thick ropes and wooden wedges. A barrel rolling loose during heavy seas can kill a man, and a single crate crashing into the hull could breach the plank seams. Everything is double-checked, even the galley pots and the surgeon's cabinet. Anything that can fall flies, anything that flies breaks. The captain remains calm but alert. His eyes scan the sky, measuring wind shifts and cloud movement. In his youth, he survived storms that tore sails to rags and left half the crew washed overboard. You can see that memory in the way he grips the rail, tight but steady. To the helm, the best helmsman is posted, an older sailor with thick hands and a scar across one cheek. His job will be to keep the bow facing the waves, preventing the ship from being caught broadside. A side-on wave in high seas can roll a ship and drown a dozen men in seconds. If the worst comes, the crew may try to heave to, a maneuver where the sails are trimmed and the rudder turned in such a way that the ship effectively stalls in place. It's a delicate tactic, useful in survival mode. Not every captain attempts it. Many rely instead on seamanship, speed, and a bit of luck. The wind begins to wail through the rigging. Rain spatters the deck like thrown gravel. From behind, the horizon disappears into a sheet of mist and spray. Get below, the bosun calls to those without duties. You're told to stay ready, to hold the lower rigging, tend the pumps, or fetch supplies as needed. You duck beneath the hatch just as the first blast of true wind hits the sails like a cannon shot. The ship lurches to starboard, groaning in its beams, ropes screaming under the strain, and the storm hasn't even begun. The storm arrives with no ceremony, just a wall of water and wind that smashes into the hull like a fist. The ship groans, deep and long, as though the very bones of it are complaining. Deck planks shudder underfoot. The sails strain against their rigging like beasts trying to break free. One of the topgallants snaps loose with a sound like gunfire and flails in the air, canvas whipping and tearing like silk in the teeth of a wild dog. Rain lashes down in thick, slanting sheets, blinding and cold. It stings your face like nettles and soaks through layers of wool and canvas in minutes. Visibility is gone, you can barely see to the end of the deck, let alone the shape of the sea beyond. All that remains is sensation, the tilt of the world beneath your feet, the whip of wind in your ears, and the constant shout of the storm all around you. The waves rise higher than the masts. They come not as tidy rolls, but as mountains, each one different, each with its own cruel intent. Some collapse in white explosions just beyond the stern, others lift the entire ship as though it were a toy. When the ship crests one, you see, just for a second, the dizzying drop beyond it, a valley of water you'll plunge into next. This is what sailors fear most, not battle, not mutiny, but the storm at sea. A power no man can fight, no blade can push back, just ropes and sails and the hope that everything holds. The helmsman fights to keep the ship's nose toward the waves, but it's like steering through a world that no longer obeys direction. The rudder groans with each twist, and the wheel jerks so violently it nearly throws him off his feet. You can see his knuckles whitening with effort. Below deck, chaos. Water pours in through seams and vents. The pumps are manned immediately, 2 men per station, 1 on each side, working in shifts to keep the rising bilge at bay. You grab a rope and help fasten a split barrel, its iron hoops clanging loose. Everything that isn't nailed down is rolling, crashing. You've learned quickly, bare feet survive better in a storm. Boots slip, but toes grip. The carpenter is already at work, hammering wedges into place where water seeps in around a hatch. Sailors move with practiced purpose, but their eyes flicker to one another constantly. Not panic, but fear barely concealed. Everyone knows the signs of a ship about to founder. A sudden jolt throws you to your knees. The ship's starboard side dips low, too low. You hear the roar of a wave crashing over, and for a heartbeat, you're submerged in darkness. When you surface again, sputtering, the deck is awash with seawater. A man has vanished. No scream, just gone. Man overboard, someone shouts, but it's already too late. No one throws a rope. No one lowers a boat, not in this. To turn now would mean everyone dies, and so the storm takes him, like it's taken thousands before. Historically, these moments were common. Entire crews could be reduced by half in a single night, their names never recorded, their stories lost. Only the ship's log might note it. Storm, 3 men washed away, pumped all night. Back above, a sail rips free, its lines frayed or cut by tension. It unfurls like a broken wing and then disappears into the dark. The bosun curses, hands shaking with wet knots, shouting for backup. Reefed sails remain, but the ship needs some drive to maintain steerage. Too little sail, and you're at the mercy of the waves. Too much, and you'll be torn apart. The captain makes the call, hoist the storm staysail. A small, tough piece of canvas, built exactly for this. You and 3 others haul it up, every step like lifting a soaked blanket uphill in the wind. The lines creak, the sail bellies out, and the ship steadies just slightly. In real storms, decisions like these meant everything. In 1789, the HMS Bounty encountered a squall near Cape Horn that nearly capsized her. Only by heaving to with storm sails and anchoring her bow into the waves did she survive. Other ships, like the President in 1815, vanished entirely, believed to have foundered in hurricanes. The wheel is lashed now, secured to keep it from spinning violently. The tiller below is reinforced with thick rope and iron pins. The masts sway alarmingly, but they hold. Every creak is a question: will it snap? Will it hold? So much timber, so much pressure. But they were built for this, English oak and pine, seasoned and bent into strength. You pass the surgeon crouched in the hold, tending to a gash on a boy's forehead. The lantern swings above them, the flame dim and shivering. Even below, the ship moves like a breathing animal. It groans with every wave, but it's still alive. So are you. The night wears on, though no one sleeps. Shifts blur, hands blister. Voices rasp from shouting over the wind. There is no time, only weather. You bail, you brace, you pray, and above all, you hold on. Dawn creeps in behind a veil of mist. The rain has eased into drizzle. The wind, once a howling force that bent masts and tore sailcloth to ribbons, now limps across the deck as a whisper. It's over. You emerge from the hold slowly, legs stiff, eyes burning from salt and sleeplessness. All around you, the ship bears the bruises of the night before. Lines hang slack and torn. One of the yards is splintered clean through, its rigging dangling like snapped sinew. The aft quarterdeck rail is gone, smashed by a rogue wave sometime in the early hours. The ship is still afloat, still sailing, but changed. So are you. The air smells of wet wood, pitch, and the sour breath of exhausted men. No one speaks much. Voices are hoarse from shouting over the wind. Every step on the sodden deck is careful. No one wants to slip now, not after surviving the worst of it. The crew moves like shadows, some dragging wreckage away, others repairing lines, drying canvas, or inspecting for leaks. The carpenter checks the hull again. The pumps are still manned, but the bilge has slowed. The worst has passed. For now, you take stock. One man is gone, washed overboard in the dark, his hammock already emptied, his name scratched from the muster roll. Another has a broken arm. The boy with the gash is lucky. A few cracked ribs, bruises, a chipped tooth. It could have been much worse. It often is. Storms in the age of sail didn't always leave survivors. Even the greatest ships could be undone by weather. In 1854, the SS Arctic, a luxury steamer, collided with another vessel in fog and sank with hundreds aboard. In the 1700s, storms near the Bay of Biscay were infamous for dragging entire convoys under. There were no lifeboats in those days, no distress signals. A lost ship simply didn't return. That possibility lives with every sailor, not just during the storm, but afterward, when the wind is gone and the sea resumes its silence. In these quiet hours, it haunts you. You help secure what remains of the topsail. The canvas is shredded in places, but repairable. Others work on the shattered railing. The crew functions like a body healing its own wounds. No ceremony, just purpose. Later, the sun breaks faintly through the mist. Light falls over the deck, and the sea, while still heaving, has gentled into long, rolling swells. The ship rises and falls in rhythm, as though catching its breath. So do you. Below deck, someone begins brewing weak tea from salted water and dried leaves. The warmth is a comfort. Men sit in silence, boots off, backs against bulkheads, staring at nothing. You don't need to speak. Every man here saw the same thing. The ocean up close, raw and infinite, and it changes something in you. It always does. Sailors carried storms long after the clouds passed. Some spoke of them often, repeating the details like talismans. Others said nothing at all. But none forgot. The emotional weight of surviving a storm wasn't always relief. It was sometimes guilt. Why him, not me? Why this ship, not that one? The man lost overboard. He laughed just hours before. The deck he slipped from was the same one you clung to. The randomness of it gnaws at you. Storms also changed how sailors viewed the world. Many grew deeply superstitious. Some refused to speak of calm weather aloud, afraid it might tempt fate. Others carved small crosses into the mast after surviving their first gale, or tied knots in their hammocks to anchor themselves during sleep. There were tales, some spoken quietly, others half-joked in daylight, of ghost ships appearing during storms, of spectral vessels seen riding impossible waves, glowing faintly through fog, unmanned and unbroken. These weren't always seen as omens of death. Sometimes they were signs of mercy, that you had seen the dead but not joined them. Of course, these stories were shaped by exhaustion, dehydration, and fear, but also by truth. Storms made the line between the living and the lost thinner than paper. And when you've stood at that edge, clinging to wet rope, watching the sea try to take everything, you begin to understand why men believed in more than just the wind. Back on deck, the ship begins to move with purpose again. Sails are mended and raised, course corrected, and speed returns. You fall back into rhythm, into duty, but the storm is still inside you. It always will be. That night you sleep lightly. Every creak of timber draws your ear. Every groan of the hull beneath your hammock sends your mind back to that first crashing wave. But eventually, exhaustion overtakes fear. The ship sails on, so do you. Not because the sea is safer now, but because somehow you are stronger. The sun rises low over the horizon, casting pale light across the water's restless surface. The storm is behind you now, but its scars remain etched into the ship's timbers and your bones alike. Every rope, every plank, every sail tells a story of struggle. On deck, the crew moves with steady purpose. The carpenter and his mates are already at work, their tools clinking as they measure splintered beams and fit new wooden patches to the hull. Salt water seeps between planks that have swollen and shrunk in the tempest, and each one must be sealed to keep the ship afloat. You watch as the sailmaker unrolls yards of heavy canvas, mending tiers with needle and waxed thread. Every patch is a small victory, a reminder that even after the storm's rage, life persists. The wind tugs gently at the sails, and for a moment, the ship breathes again. Repairs take time and patience. Every splintered spar, every broken block or cleat must be replaced or reinforced. The crew fashions makeshift tools from whatever wood and iron they have on board. Spare rigging is often a precious commodity, rationed carefully, because new rope isn't something you can just order mid-ocean. Below deck, the mood is quieter but no less urgent. The pumps still hum, removing the last traces of seawater. Barrels of fresh water are checked, and the cook inspects the stores. Storms often spoil food. Salt water soaks grain, barrels leak, dried meat becomes damp and moldy. The galley smells of brine and smoke, and you know this is only the beginning of a longer struggle. The captain gathers the officers to review supplies. Rations will be tightened. Fresh water, already limited, must be carefully measured to last the journey. Meals will become smaller, morale will be tested. Historically, sailors endured long voyages on strict diets. Hardtack biscuits, salted pork or beef, dried peas, and sometimes a little ship's biscuit soaked in tea or grog. Fresh food was a rarity, and scurvy, a disease caused by lack of vitamin C, loomed as a constant threat. You remember reading how ships would carry citrus fruits or sauerkraut to stave off illness, but these provisions were heavy and perishable. Storms could destroy the fragile stores, forcing captains to ration even further. Water is even more precious. A man can survive weeks without food, but only days without water. After a storm, barrels sometimes fill with seawater, contaminated and unusable. Every drop saved is a drop earned. The crew feels the weight of scarcity. You notice how conversation slows, how smiles grow rare. The easy laughter of the calm seas gives way to quiet endurance. Yet even here, in hardship, there is routine. Each morning, men take their turn fetching water, checking the stores, or helping with repairs. The cook stretches rations with soups and stews, mixing dried ingredients with whatever seaweed or fish can be caught. Hygiene is maintained as best as possible. Illness must be kept at bay. These daily tasks become the framework of survival. They fill the hours and quiet the mind, which might otherwise drift toward despair. Endless ocean stretches in every direction, a vast expanse of blue-gray water and sky that seems to swallow time itself. Days bleed into nights, with little to mark their passage. The steady rhythm of the waves becomes a kind of heartbeat, constant but indifferent. You find yourself counting the hours by the turning of the ship's wheel, the changing angle of the sun, or the shifting position of a single star. Time takes on a strange quality out here. Minutes feel both long and short, like a whispered secret and a shouted command at once. You know this is the loneliness sailors have spoken of for centuries, a kind of silent prison with no walls but the endless sea. To cope, the crew develops routines. The day begins with the same chores, the same rounds of repairs and maintenance. Some men keep journals or write letters home, pouring thoughts onto paper to hold onto their sense of self and connection. Others turn to prayer or superstition, hoping to appease the sea gods or ward off bad luck. Sailors tell stories, some true, some exaggerated, others pure invention. These tales weave through the decks, a thread of shared history that binds the men together. They talk of distant lands, of home, of adventures and misadventures, of ghosts and omens. Even when the sun hides behind clouds and the sea is flat, the stories keep the crew's spirits alive. Yet isolation can fray nerves. Weeks without fresh faces or change of scenery magnify small irritations. The close quarters breed tension. A harsh word echoes longer than intended. An old grudge smolders beneath polite smiles. You sense the fragile balance between camaraderie and conflict, how quickly the latter can disrupt the former. Discipline is strict aboard ship, but captains know it's a delicate thing. Too much punishment breeds resentment and mutiny, too little, and order falls apart. The officers walk a fine line, maintaining authority while trying to understand the men's struggles. Arguments over food, sleep, or tasks flare up, but are usually quelled before they grow. Still, you watch a brawl break out once, two sailors fueled by exhaustion and frustration, fists swinging under the low light of a lantern. Others pull them apart, the fight simmering into bitter silence. Even the strongest bonds are tested. Trust becomes precious. You realize how much you rely on each man's steadiness, how vital it is to keep spirits up, not just for yourself, but for everyone aboard. Amid this tension, small acts of kindness shine brightly. A sailor shares his last biscuit. Another offers a spare blanket on a cold night. The cook slips extra broth into a bowl. These moments remind you that survival isn't just about strength, it's about humanity. Historically, long voyages were as much psychological tests as physical ones. The isolation, monotony, and hardship pushed men to their limits. Some lost themselves to despair or madness. Others found unexpected reserves of resilience. The social structure aboard ship, captain, officers, crew, helped maintain order, but also created barriers. Rank dictated not just work, but who shared meals and quarters. Yet in storm's aftermath, these lines sometimes blurred. Survival demanded cooperation beyond titles. In the quiet moments, you watch the crew gather on deck, sharing smoke from a pipe, exchanging stories. Laughter is rare but treasured. For a brief time, the storm's memory softens, replaced by a fragile hope. And so the ship sails on, carrying men bound by ocean and ordeal. They endure not just the sea's fury, but the long, silent stretch afterward, the weight of time, and the fragile ties that hold them together. The horizon shifts. At first, it is just a faint blur, a slight darkening against the endless blue and gray. You peer through the morning haze, heart quickening despite your calm exterior. Could it be land? For weeks, the sea has been your only companion. The sky, your ceiling, the waves, a relentless rhythmic lullaby. Now a silhouette emerges, soft and green, breaking the ocean's monotony. A distant shore, a promise. The crew gathers, eyes brightening, voices hushed in disbelief. Some cross themselves, others grip the rigging as if holding onto hope itself. After so much hardship, the storm, the scarcity, the isolation, the sight of land is both relief and anxiety. Relief because the endless sea can swallow a ship whole, because fresh water and food may await ashore, because the journey's end, or at least a waypoint, is near. Anxiety because the land is unknown. What waits beyond those shores? Friendly natives or hostile, safe harbor or dangerous reefs? The unknown can be as daunting as the storm. You feel the ship adjust course slowly toward the coast. Sails are trimmed carefully, the crew alert to every change in wind and wave. The captain consults charts and logs, plotting the safest approach. The final approach is a delicate dance. The ocean hides dangers, shoals, hidden rocks, shifting currents. Ships of old often found their greatest threat not in storms or enemy guns, but in the shallow waters near land. Historically, many voyages ended here. After months at sea, captains had to navigate unfamiliar shores with little information. Lighthouses were rare, and many ports were hostile or uncharted. Shipwrecks near coasts were common. You stand at the bow, the salty breeze carrying a different scent, the promise of earth, pines, smoke. The crew's chatter is lighter now, tentative smiles appearing. The ship creaks as if sensing the change too, but even here caution reigns. The captain orders soundings, dropping weighted lines to measure depth, and the lookout scans tirelessly. Every rock avoided is a victory. The ship moves steadily, and with each passing hour, the weight of the voyage lifts slightly. You realize that after all the storms, all the hardships, this is the moment the crew has been living for. Yet you also understand that the journey's end is only the start of another story. Landfall means new challenges, repairs, resupply, diplomacy, and the unknown trials of port life. For now, you breathe deeply and savor the moment. The sea has tested you, but it has also carried you here. Night falls, and the stars emerge, clearer than they've been in weeks. You find yourself alone on deck, gazing upward at the vast sky. The constellations wheel slowly overhead, familiar and distant. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, a realm both beautiful and terrifying. Its vastness humbles you, reminding you how small you are within it. You reflect on the journey, the storms faced, the fears overcome, the bonds formed. The sea is not a place of ghosts and legends, but of reality and resilience. The tales of phantom ships, lost souls, and eerie lights are born from the same experience. Isolation, danger, and the unknown. Yet those stories serve a purpose. They remind sailors that the ocean is alive with mystery, that even in the harshest conditions, there is wonder. You think about the crew, their courage and endurance. The silent prayers whispered in the dark, the shared stories that kept hope alive. And you realize that the true ghost ship is not a supernatural vessel, but the experience itself. The long hours of waiting, the fear of the unseen, the tenuous hold on survival. As the ship sails toward land, you feel a quiet gratitude for the strength to endure, for the lessons learned, for the sea in all its fury and grace. Tomorrow the journey will continue, but tonight you rest under the stars, carried by the ocean's endless song. The first hint of land is never forgotten. After weeks, sometimes months, of endless ocean, the faint outline of shore appears on the horizon like a distant promise. It begins as a subtle shift in the color of the sky or a slight change in the pattern of waves. You watch carefully, every eye on the lookout. As the ship draws closer, the signs multiply. Seagulls circle above, their cries sharper and more frequent. The air carries new scents, pine, smoke, salt mingled with earth, that reach your nostrils like a breath of fresh hope. The sea, once vast and lonely, feels suddenly smaller, confined, as if the ocean itself is yielding to the pull of land. Preparing to enter port is a carefully choreographed dance. The sails are trimmed to catch the gentler harbor winds, and the rigging creaks with practiced hands working swiftly to adjust. The crew moves with renewed energy, each man aware that the voyage's end is near, but the work is far from over. Historically, navigating into harbor was one of the most challenging and dangerous parts of any voyage. Ports were often congested with ships, bustling with activity, and littered with hidden shoals or reefs. Pilots, experienced local seamen familiar with the waters, were sometimes brought aboard to guide the ship safely to dock. Without modern navigation tools, this was a moment requiring skill, knowledge, and nerves of steel. The captain consults the charts repeatedly, plotting a course through narrow channels and shifting tides. You can feel the tension, a mix of excitement and caution, rippling through the crew. A mistake here could mean wrecking on the rocks or colliding with another vessel. In the distance, other ships crowd the harbor, merchant vessels, naval frigates, fishing boats. Their masts form a forest against the skyline, sails furled and flags fluttering. The sounds of port life begin to filter across the water, the creak of winches, the shouts of dock workers, the clang of metal on wood. As you draw closer, the town itself comes into view. Timber-framed houses cluster along the waterfront, smoke rising from chimneys. Narrow streets wind away from the docks, busy with carts, horses, and townsfolk going about their daily business. For the crew, the sight of land stirs a complex tide of emotions. Relief and joy mingle with fatigue and apprehension. Some men smile openly, the prospect of fresh food, clean clothes, and soft beds rekindling their spirits. Others remain quiet, eyes distant, weighed down by the memories of the voyage or worries about what awaits ashore. You help prepare the ship for docking. Halyards are slackened, anchors readied, gangplanks checked. The crew scrambles to secure loose gear, stowing sails and tidying the deck after the storm and weeks at sea. Every knot tied and line coiled feels like a step closer to home. Finally, the ship slips into the harbor, guided by the steady hand of the helmsman and the expert voice of the pilot. The anchor drops with a heavy splash, and the vessel settles, rocking gently in the calm waters. Stepping onto solid ground after months aboard ship is like waking from a long, strange dream. The first touch of earth beneath your boots is both startling and grounding. The ground is uneven, hard, and smells richly of soil and life, so different from the salt and spray of the sea. The air is filled with unfamiliar sounds, the chatter of crowds, the clatter of wheels on cobblestone, the distant barking of dogs, the calls of merchants hawking their wares. The colors are brighter, the smells more varied, fresh bread, wood smoke, livestock, flowers. For a moment you stand still, taking it all in. The bustle of land life is overwhelming. The constant motion, the crowds, the noise, everything moves faster, sharper, more intrusive than the slow, steady rhythm of the sea. Clothing feels different, heavier, less familiar. The softness of fabric, the warmth of a dry shirt, the snugness of boots, these comforts are both welcome and strange. Your body aches from standing and walking on hard surfaces, a reminder of how the ocean's movement had been your constant companion. Food, too, is a revelation. The salty rations replaced by fresh bread, roasted meats, fruits, and vegetables. The richness of flavors surprises your palate, dulled by months of dried and salted provisions. Water from a clean well tastes sweet, a luxury once unimaginable. Yet with all the joys, there is a subtle disorientation. The world ashore feels alien, the predictable vastness of the ocean replaced by bustling streets and unfamiliar faces. The freedom of the open sea swapped for walls and boundaries. Sailors often describe this as a kind of reverse homesickness, a longing not for land, but for the sea they left behind. The ship, with all its hardships, had been their home. The ocean, their constant and companion. For now, though, you move forward. To the taverns and markets, the homes of loved ones, the quiet spaces where you can rest and heal. The journey may have ended, but another awaits. The creaking of wooden doors, the laughter of children, the smell of fresh bread baking in a hearth. These are the first comforts of home after months or even years at sea. Stepping onto familiar soil, the sailor is greeted by a mixture of joy, relief, and sometimes an aching sense of distance. Letters, carefully preserved and worn from repeated reading, are handed out and shared among the crew. Written in cramped, earnest script, they carry news of births, deaths, festivals, and daily life back on land. The words bridge the gap between two worlds, the restless sea and the rooted shore. Family reunions are moments of pure emotion. Mothers clutch sons close, wives press trembling hands to faces weathered by wind and sun, children stare wide-eyed at the sailors' stories of distant horizons. Yet even in these reunions, a subtle tension lingers. Time and experience have changed both sailor and home. What was left behind is not quite the same as what returns. Historically, many sailors return to find loved ones lost to illness or new family members unknown to them. The passage of time at sea could feel suspended for the sailor, but brutally accelerated for those ashore. The gulf between these two realities was a common source of melancholy and disconnect. Stories poured out in taverns and parlors, weaving truth with exaggeration, myth with memory. The sailor becomes both narrator and legend, his exploits celebrated, sometimes envied, often misunderstood. Yet beneath the bravado and laughter, there often lay a quiet loneliness. Life on land could be disorienting. The sailor, accustomed to the regimented routines of the ship, found the unpredictable pace of town bewildering. The crowds, noise, and the relentless chatter felt intrusive after the vast silence of the sea. The sailor's heart, still beating to the rhythm of tides and winds, sometimes ached for the open horizon. Many sailors struggled with reintegration. Some sought solace in old friendships or new relationships. Others found the constraints of land life suffocating. The contrast was stark. the endless sky and boundless ocean versus the narrow streets and confined spaces of towns. This restlessness, born of a life spent chasing horizons, was a common theme. For many, the sea was not just a workplace, but a calling, an essential part of identity and existence. Stories abound of sailors who, after only brief rests ashore, signed on for another voyage, unable to resist the pull of the waves. The sea's allure was often described as a kind of freedom, the freedom from societal expectations, from the rules and roles of life on land. The ship, for all its hardships, was a place of equality and brotherhood, where a man's worth was measured by skill and courage rather than birth or wealth. This cycle of departure and return shaped generations of sailors. Ports became waypoints in a life of movement, stories, and change. Each voyage added layers to the sailor's experience, deepening the bond with the sea and the bittersweet nature of homecomings. Amidst all this, captains and officers often acted as mediators, guiding the crew through the emotional upheaval of arrival and preparing them for eventual departure. Discipline softened with understanding, authority mingled with empathy. The sailor's life was one of contrasts, camaraderie and isolation, excitement and monotony, danger and safety. The sea tested both body and spirit, forging resilience and restlessness in equal measure. As night falls on the bustling port, you find yourself among your shipmates, sharing stories under flickering lantern light. Laughter rings out, stories grow taller, and for a moment, the ache of the sea quiets. Yet beneath the joy, the sea's call remains, a whisper in the wind, a tug at the soul, a promise of horizons yet unseen. The stories of the sea do not end when a ship docks or a sailor's boots touch solid ground. Instead, they echo through generations, carried in voices, traditions, and memories. The sea's legacy is not just in the ships or maps, but in the men and women who lived its endless rhythm. You see it in the weathered faces of veteran sailors who settle near ports, their eyes gleaming with tales of tempests and distant lands. In the songs sung in taverns, passed from lips to eager ears, recounting voyages fraught with peril and triumph. These stories keep alive the spirit of the sea, binding the past with the present. Families inherit the lore, sewing it into quilts, painting it on walls, and engraving it in diaries. Young boys and girls grow up hearing of legendary storms, ghost ships, and miraculous escapes. For many, the sea is more than a place. It's a heritage, a source of identity and pride. The skills learned aboard ship, navigation, knot tying, weather reading, become tools for new generations, sometimes guiding fishermen, traders, or explorers. The rhythms of the ocean influence local culture, festivals timed to tides, superstitions about weather, rituals honoring lost sailors. But the sea is also a reminder of sacrifice. Memorials stand in quiet harbors, names etched in stone, honoring those who never returned. Every voyage is a gamble, a passage between life and the unknown. You think of the countless sailors who gave their lives to the ocean's depths, their stories untold except in whispers and legends. Their memory shapes the respect and caution with which the sea is still approached today. As night deepens and the port quiets, you reflect on the sailor's journey, not just the physical voyage, but the emotional tides that accompany it. Life at sea is a cycle of departure and return, loss and reunion, hardship and celebration. The ocean is both home and challenge, vast and unforgiving, yet endlessly beautiful. It tests those who venture upon it, demanding courage, skill, and endurance. Yet for all its trials, the sea offers freedom, a chance to escape, to explore, to find oneself amidst the waves. The sailor carries that freedom in their heart, even when ashore. And so this chapter closes, not with an ending, but with a pause. The story of the sea and those who sail it is endless, a constant ebb and flow like the tides themselves. Tomorrow the ship will set sail again, the horizon will call, and the journey will continue. But for now, beneath the stars and the quiet lull of the harbor, there is peace. As the night deepens and the harbor settles into quiet, the stories of the sea drift gently into silence. The waves continue their timeless dance, carrying with them the memories of sailors past and present, of storms weathered, horizons chased, and homes far away. Wherever the ocean calls next, its mysteries remain, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to listen. Thank you for joining this journey across the restless seas. May your dreams be filled with gentle waves and starry skies, and may you find peace in the vast, enduring rhythm of the ocean. Until next time, rest well, and let the tides carry you softly into sleep.